Hello, everyone, and welcome to another video on CISM stories. In this video, we are going to talk about the breakdown mindset of the CISM questions. How do we break the questions down into different keywords, different parts, so that we understand how to go towards the correct answer, how to reach towards the correct answer. We might also want to remove the wrong answers from the list when the four options are given and reach to the correct answer. So, how do we do that? Let's see. So, thinking in a CISM or Certified Information Security Manager style means approaching question from a managerial, risk-based, and business-related or aligned perspective. It is not purely technical. Now, business alignment comes first. Always ask what is the business objective or impact. Choose the answer that aligns security with your goals, appetites, and business continuity. But before we proceed to that, let us see what do we have to discuss in this whole video. So we are going to understand the CISM style thinking. We are going to talk about CISM keyword mapping. We are also going to see some CISM style question breakdowns. Let us start with the first part, which says CISM style thinking, that is business alignment, which is coming first. As I mentioned, always ask what is the business objective or impact. Choose the answer that align security with organizational goal, risk appetite, and business continuity. What does this mean? Always asking what is the business impact or objective. This means instead of reacting to a security issue from a purely technical viewpoint or standpoint, CISM professionals must consider how that issue affects the business, its goals, its revenues, its operations, reputation, compliance, and customers. Why it's critical? Because security exists to support the business, not to block it. Every control or decision must be justified by a business value, such as reducing a downtime, avoiding the fines, protecting the data, or maintaining customer support. Now, it helps also to prioritize. Not every risk deserves $100,000 fix if the impact is minimal. How to apply this thinking? Now, in one of the scenarios, say you discover a vulnerability in a backup system. Don't say, let's patch it immediately. You have to say, is this system in use? If exploited, what business function would be impacted? Can we tolerate the risk temporarily? Another scenario is, say, a team wants to move customer data to a third party cloud provider. Don't ask, is the cloud encrypted? But ask instead, will this help us upscale or serve customers faster? What compliance risk does this bring? Is the provider contractually aligned with our privacy obligations? So, in decision making, this helps, this mindset helps a lot. When faced with choices like technical upgrade, vendor selection, or a compliance fix, frame the option around their business impact. Does this reduce risk to a revenue generating system? Will this improve audit performance? Is the solution cost effective for the actual risk? A CSM tip for you, exam tip for you. When stuck between two options or very close answers, choose the one that references business alignment, risk prioritization, or impact, not just technical correctness. So, if the question is about implementing a new control, choose the one that supports business operation while managing risks effectively. Next style of thinking is risk based decision making. Now, risk based decision making in this, think like a manager, but not a security engineer. Identify, that is, what is the likelihood and impact of this risk, and prioritize the risk mitigation strategies that are cost effective and proportional. What does this mean? To understand and manage any risk, we must evaluate the likelihood. That is, how likely is it that the risk will materialize? That is, exploited, or this risk will actually happen or occur in your environment. Second is the impact. If the risk does happen, how severe would the consequence be? That is, financially, operationally, reputationally, legally. So, why is this important from a CISM perspective? CISM professionals don't just find problems, they prioritize them. You can't protect everything equally. So, assess the likelihood and impact. You can focus on risks that truly matter to the business, allocate resources efficiently, justify the security investments in business terms, and align risk treatment with risk appetite and tolerance. Some examples. Suppose the risk is outdated encryption algorithm. The likelihood might be medium, the impact might be high. So a risk rating based on your assessment would be high. If there is a server misconfiguration in test environment, the likelihood might be low and the impact might be low. So the risk rating will be low as per your assessment. So even if a risk is severe, if it's a very unlikely, it may not need urgent action. And if a risk is very likely but low impact, you might tolerate it or mitigate it cheaply. How it is put in practice? You can use heat maps, plot the risks visually to guide decisions, risk registers, document these risks with the assessed levels, and also create business cases to justify the investment by showing how they reduce high likelihood, high impact risk. A exam tip: when a question asks what to do first and risk hasn't been quantified, the right answer is often perform a risk assessment based on likelihood and impact. Next thinking style is process over tools. Focus on policies, governance, frameworks, procedures, and oversight, not specific tools or technologies. If a question mentions tool, ask yourself, is this tool supporting a larger process? Now, if a question mentions tools, what does this whole idea of process over tools means? In the CISM exam and even real world governance rules, you are tested not on tools themselves but on how they fit into a broader security process or program or governance structure. Tools are basically enablers, not solutions by themselves. So, when a question mentions a tool like a SIEM tool, SIEM tool, or a DLP tool, or a firewall, vulnerability scanner, don't immediately choose the answer that says deploy the tool. Instead, ask the question, is this part of a defined policy or a control framework? Has a risk assessment justified its use? Is the process around the tool established and monitored? Why is this important for the CISM exam? CISM is about management level decisions, not technical implementation. So CISSP might test how a firewall works, but CISM tests why and when you use one and whether it supports a defined process like access control policy, incident response policy, regulatory compliance, etc. Let's talk with an example. Suppose there is a question asked, a new SIEM tool has been purchased to improve threat detection. What should the CISM do next? A not correct answer would look like deploy the same immediately. And a correct and a better answer would look like establish logging policies and define use cases and response workflows to support the SIEM implementation. So the tool is going to support the process, not the other way around. So when you are having a decision flow to tool mention, think about the questions like, is the tool aligned with a document policy or a control objective? Was a risk or compliance need identified first? Does the organization have the process maturity to operate the tool effectively? And is the tool integrated into the broader security life cycle like monitoring, reporting, improving? A CISM exam tip: If a tool is mentioned but no risk assessment, governance process, or business alignment is in place, then jumping straight to deployment is not the CISM way. Next, thinking style: stakeholder communication and governance. Security is not done in isolation. Favor the answer that includes stakeholder engagement, cross functional communication, and board level reporting. Now, what does this mean? When you are answering CSM exam questions or acting in a real world role, you should prioritize responses that reflect broad business level communication rather than siloed technical actions. Security is no longer just an IT issue, it affects every part of the business, including legal, HR, finance, operations, and especially executive leadership. CSM certified professionals must demonstrate the ability to engage stakeholders across departments, keep the leadership and the board informed and aligned, and facilitate communication between security and the business. Why is it important? Stakeholder engagement will ensure buy in, shared responsibility, and clarity on risk ownership. Cross functional communication breaks down the silos and improves the effectiveness of policies, incident response, and training. Why is it important for CISM? Stakeholder engagement ensures buy in, shared responsibility, and clarity in risk ownership. Cross functional communication breaks down the silos and improves the effectiveness of policies, incident response, and training. And board level reporting builds trust, supports funding, and ties the security to strategic goals. So, CISM is about influence and alignment, not just implementation. Let's talk about an example scenario. Suppose the question says, after a data breach, what is the CISM's most appropriate next step? A not so correct answer is patch the affected system and reconfigure the firewall. A correct and good approach would be conduct a post incident review involving the stakeholders and prepare a report for executive leadership. This will show stakeholder involvement, learning, and communication the CISM way. And who are typically the stakeholders in CISM context? The executives and boards for strategic alignment and funding, legal and compliance team for reporting, breach handling, and obligations, HR for insider threats or awareness programs, IT and DevOps for operational control execution, and third party vendors for risk sharing and service level understanding. An exam tip: when two answers seem very technically correct, choose the one that demonstrates stakeholder collaboration or business communication. Next is life cycle view. Always think in terms of continuous improvement and life cycle management. That is, assess, plan, implement, monitor, and improve. Now, this is a season way of thinking about security as a continuous business aligned process, not a one time technical aspect. Assess means identify and evaluate the risk, threat, vulnerability, and compliance gaps. You ask the questions like, what are the critical assets? What risks exist to those assets? And how likely and impactful are those risks? So, a CISM alignment is risk assessment, business impact analysis, and gap identification. The next phase is plan, where develop you develop security strategies, controls, and response plans based on assessment. And you ask the questions: what policy and controls are needed? What frameworks or standards will we align with? And what resources and budget are required? So a CISM alignment would be strategic alignment, policy development, and stakeholder engagement. The next step is implement, which means deploy the selected controls, tools, and processes. Questions you ask is, who is responsible for that? Are training and awareness in place? Are we following a secure change management process? The CSM alignment thought process would be like control implementation, role assignment, and incident readiness. The next stage is monitor, which is continuously tracking the effectiveness of controls and detect incidents or gaps. The questions you ask are, Are controls functioning as intended? Are incidents being detected early? Are KPIs and KRIs or risk metrics being reported? The last step is improve, which means use feedback and results to optimize policies, controls, and strategies. The correct questions you ask is, what did we learn from incidents or audits? Are there trends that indicate involving risks? What needs to be adjusted or enhanced? Why is this life cycle essential for CISM and GRC? It promotes a proactive, not reactive security culture. It ensures that security is tied to business outcome and continuously improving, and supports audit trails, compliance mapping, and executive confidence. The next is compliance and legal responsibility. Be aware of laws, standards, regulations, and contracts, and choose the answer that protect the organization from legal, financial, and reputational risks. What does this mean? In CISM and GRC, your primary responsibility is to ensure business resilience and trust, not just technical security. So, when you evaluate choices, always ask, does this action reduce potential legal penalties, financial losses, or damage to brand trust? If an answer mitigates these high level risks, it's likely the CISM correct choice. Why does it matter? Because non-compliance with laws like GDPR, HIPAA, and SOX can result in fines, lawsuit, or criminal penalties. Breaches can result in lost revenue, fraud, ransomware payment, and regulatory fines. And loss of customer trust can cause long-term business damage that's hard to recover from. So, a CISM is not about eliminating all threats; it is about reducing the ones that truly matter in the organization. One example scenario would be, suppose a company is notified of a data breach involving personal data, but outside the company no one outside the company knows yet, which is the most appropriate action for the CISM. Now, the most appropriate action for the CISM in this case would be immediately inform the board, legal, and data protection authorities as required, because this action protects the organization legally. That is, GDPR has a 72-hour rule. Financially, it will avoid the fine, and reputationally, it shows responsibility. It also reflects cross functional engagement and compliance awareness. An exam tip: when you are stuck between technical or compliance based answers, go with the one that addresses regulatory or contractual obligations, protects the customer trust, and minimizes the business liability. Now let's jump into a couple of questions which will bring more clarity for our discussion. The first question says, your organization has just adopted a new cloud service. Security controls are still being evaluated. What should you do first? Option A, begin implementing technical controls for data protection. Option B, review the service level agreements, SLAs, and compliance requirements. Perform a vulnerability scan on the cloud platform and notify users about the risks of using the cloud platform. Now, in this scenario, a new cloud service has been adopted, security controls are still being evaluated, and they are not finalized or implemented yet. And you are asked, what should you do first? So, option A, it sounds technically good, but it's premature, and you risk duplicating controls or breaching terms. Option C is not advisable without permission, because cloud providers usually restrict this, and it could violate the terms of service. Also, scanning doesn't help if you don't understand your compliance and legal context. Option D, communication is important, but you first need clarity on the risk and responsibility. Otherwise, you may communicate incorrectly or prematurely. So, the best option in this case is option B, review the SLA and compliance requirement. Before you implement controls, you need to understand your responsibility and what cloud provider is responsible for. You need to understand the SLA and compliance clause, which helps you to identify shared responsibility in cloud model, understand legal, regulatory, and contractual obligations, evaluate whether the service aligns with your organization's risk appetite or not. So the CISM mindset says governance and compliance is always thought before technology. You don't secure what you don't understand. So the correct answer is answer B. Next question. Your company is migrating critical workloads to a third party cloud provider. The IT team proposes implementing encryption and firewall immediately. What should be the CISM's first action? Now, in this scenario, your company is migrating critical workloads to a third party cloud provider. The IT team suggests immediate implementation of encryption and firewall, which are technical controls. And you are asked, what should the CISM do first? Now, in this, the CISM mindset calls us to be having a risk based decision making. The options given are approve the implementation of the proposed security controls, review the business objectives and perform a cloud risk assessment, instruct the legal to update the vendor contract with liability clause, deploy monitoring tools to track cloud activity. Now, before implementing controls, CISM's best practice is to first understand the risk environment. So, a cloud risk assessment, if we do that, it will help us to understand what type of data is moved, what are the compliance obligations, is it GDPR, HIPAA, PCI, high trust, whatever it is, then threats and vulnerabilities in the cloud setup, and shared responsibility model implications. Also, the assessment should also consider business objectives like uptime, scalability need, cost constraint, etc. Right? So that is something which we'll have to keep in mind. Now, for option A, it is premature and we cannot approve controls until we understand what risk they mitigate and whether they fit our business need. Option C is important but can't assign the liability until we have identified what the risks and responsibilities are through a risk assessment. And legal actions are based on informed decisions and but not on assumptions. And option D is monitoring. Monitoring is useful, but it's a tactical step that comes after you have defined your governance and control framework based on a risk assessment. So the option B is the best option because we do risk based decision making and we have business alignment. So review the business objective and perform a cloud risk assessment. The principle for CISM which is at work here is you don't implement controls until you have assessed the risk. Next question. Your organization's CFO wants to fast track a new security analytics platform to impress the board before the next audit. The security team hasn't assessed the need yet. What should the CISM do first? Now, the options are approve the request to show executive alignment. Option B, conduct a business impact and risk analysis. Option C, evaluate various vendors and their pricing models. And option D, prepare a demo to showcase the new platform to the board. Now, in this case, option A, let us first understand the scenario here. The CFO wants to fast track the new security analytics platform. The goal is to impress the board before the next audit. The security team has not assessed the need for this tool yet and what the CISM should do first. So, as per the options, the first one says approve the request to show executive alignment. So, CISM doesn't mean blindly agreeing with executives, and this is politically tempting, but it is lacking the risk justification. We cannot just approve a request. Option C, again, you only compare vendors after confirming the business need and risk case. So it is a premature option. Otherwise, the risk wasting time And otherwise, we risk wasting time and budget on something which is not even needed in the environment. The option D, this is basically showcasing over strategy. The board wants to see how security supports the business, not a very polished and shiny dashboard without any justification. So the option B that we have, basically it says conduct a business impact and risk analysis. So a CISM should not react to executive pressure without due diligence. So first step is to ask what risks are we trying to solve? What's the business impact if we don't act? And if this tool justifies a control gap or threat exposure. Understanding the business impact or business context is also important, because it we understand the whether this tool is addressing a real risk or not, whether it's supporting a audit readiness or not, and whether it aligns with the security program's objective or not, rather than just spending money on optics. So the answer is option B. Next question. The existence of physical barriers, card, and personal identification number, that is PIN access systems, camera, alarm, and security guards, best describes this security approach. Option A, access control. Option B, security information and event management. Option C, defense in depth. Option D, security parameters. Now the question is basically about a combination of physical barrier, card and pin access system, camera and alarm, and security guards. So, if we think of option A, access control, it only refers to a mechanism of granting and denying access, like the card and the pin part. It does not encompass the whole set of the physical and monitoring controls mentioned here. Option B, that is SIEM, it is a software solution used to collect, analyze, and correlate security logs and events. It has nothing to do with physical controls or guards. Option D, security perimeter. It refers to a outer boundary of a security environment, that is a fence, firewall, network boundary, etc. It may include some of the listed items, but not all. Also, it does not describe a layered strategy. So the correct answer here would be a layered strategy, that is defense in depth. So this is the correct answer. Next question. An internal vulnerability assessment has identified an outdated protocol being used in a legacy business critical system. Replacing the protocol would require significant downtime and investment, but no active threats have been detected exploiting it. What is the most appropriate action for the CISM to take? Option A, immediately replace the protocol with the latest secure version. Option B, decommission the legacy system to eliminate the vulnerability. Option C, conduct a risk assessment considering business impact and likelihood of exploitation. Option D, notify the executive team that the system is not compliant and request funding. Let us see the recap of the question. A legacy business critical system using an outdated protocol. No active threats have been observed. Replacing the protocol would require high cost and downtime. The question is, what is the most appropriate action for the CISM to take? So, in the first option, option A, it sounds technically solid, but it is again not a complete picture. No risk assessment, that means unjustified business disruption. And it goes against the CISM principle of risk informed, cost effective decision making, which we are not doing in the option A. Option B, decommission the legacy system to eliminate vulnerability. Not a feasible option for many business critical systems, because they run on legacy systems and we cannot just simply replace it in one day. CISM promotes balance, not radical disruption. Extreme responses like this may cause damage rather than protection. And option D, notify the executive team. This step comes after the risk is assessed. Executives want decision backed by data analysis and impact assessment, but not technical jargons and alerts. So the option C, is more weighing towards a risk based approach, the core responsibility of the CISM, because the decision is based on business impact, likelihood of exploitation, cost benefit of mitigation, and risk appetite. So is this a real and imminent threat? You have to understand that. How much business disruption would replace the protocol use? You have to understand that. Also, can compensating controls or monitoring reduce risk short terms? Based on all this understanding, you will be able to give the answer. That is the answer number C. Now, after doing the questions, we come to a point of keyword maps. The keyword mapping that we see here, it is very important to understand from the exam perspective, because you have to know, if you see a particular keyword or a set of keyword, what you should think about in terms of answer to get to the correct answer or remove the wrong answers. So the first one says implement controls. If you see implement control, you think, was a risk assessment done first? Also, you do you have a policy or a process that justifies the control? So your mindset as a CSM should be, controls are not deployed until they are justified by business aligned risk analysis. So avoid jumping to action. Answer unless governance is already in place. Second is non compliance. For this, ask the question like legal regulatory board communication, whether it is in place. So, legal regulatory or contractual consequences are there or not, or what are they? Have we notified the stakeholders like legal compliance or executives? Do we understand the root cause of non compliance? So, your mindset as a CISM should be address the compliance gap in a alignment with governance and regulatory obligations. Often the best action is to conduct a gap assessment or gap analysis when we have to update the controls or processes. Next is security incident. Think in terms of incident response plan. In this, you ask questions like, has the incident response plan been activated? Are the roles and communication channels defined? Are we containing but not just fixing? So your mindset should be to choose an answer that involve containment, communication, and post incident analysis, not just technical response. Next is the awareness gap. In this, as a CISM, you are going to ask a question: is this a result of a failed or missing training process? Do we have metrics to track awareness effectiveness? So, your mindset as CISM should address the human factor, per, prefer the answers involving ongoing awareness programs, simulations, or role based training, not just technical enforcement. The next is budget constraint. Ask the question: can we do a risk prioritization to focus on what matters most? Can we show cost benefit to justify funding? Your CISM mindset should be choose the risk based control selection or business case development. Budget limits don't mean do nothing, it means do what matters most. Next is cloud vendor issues. If you see this, ask the question: what does the SLA or a contract say? Have we done a vendor risk assessment? The Caesar mindset should be, you are managing shared risk. Choose answers involving SLA reviews, compliance mapping, or third party due diligence. Next is new system or project. Ask the questions, if you see this, where security requirements defined during planning? Did we do a risk assessment or review for compliance and data handling? Your mindset should be, security must be baked into the software development lifecycle or a system development lifecycle. Look for answers involving early engagement, security planning, or architectural reviews. Next is the metrics or performance. Ask the question as a CISM as, are we using the right KPI, KRI to measure effectiveness? Are we tracking control performance or program maturity? Your CISM mindset should be like, pick the answers that include monitoring, measurement, and reporting to leadership. Avoid vague or purely technical metrics. Next is post incident. If you see this, ask the question: have we conducted a lesson learned session? Have we updated the incident response plan or controls? Your mindset should be embrace the continuous improvement, choose the actions that reflect review, improvement, documentation, and communication of the findings. And now we come to the last part of this video where we have to understand the strategic flow, that is governance, and then risk, and then compliance, and then operations. So GRCO. The governance is who decides and sets the direction. The risk is what can go wrong and how bad can it be. Compliance is about what must we follow, and operations is how do we execute securely every day. Now, without governance, there is no clarity or leadership. Without risk analysis, there's no securing at all. You are just securing blindly. Without compliance, you are vulnerable to fines and failures, and without operations, strategies stays on paper. So that brings us to the end of today's discussion and this video. You can always reach out to us on the given email address or the WhatsApp number. We will be happy to help you on your CISM journey or GRC journey, or any other cyber security requirements if you have. And thank you so much for watching this video till the end.